is still going to enforce the Constitution, rather than say, well, we find it politically desirable that this result occur, and therefore we're going to do a tap dance around the law and find a way to say yes. I have ultimate distaste for a member of the Supreme Court who, if he or she doesn't have the brains within himself or herself to decide it correctly, they have staffs for that purpose. So when they trample the Constitution, it is the ultimate indignity and abuse. But I think, back to the question, that if compensation for people not in a federally aided company is established, it hasn't been established yet. So far it's been everybody who took the money, then it would be unconstitutional. Yes, sir. Or wait a minute. Yes.
Yeah. When you helped form all this, there were 3 million people in the country.
Yes.
Now there's 300 million.
Yes.
And as a scientist, you can appreciate nature abhors a vacuum. And I've been in the Congress to see how big, how many people are there in my generation. And I am aghast that few people controls that much money. And my little Italian mother, 40 years ago, was aghast that few people control that much money. And I see, I remember the things that are happening now in our government. As a young person growing up, being educated in college, this could never happen in America, but it's happening. And my concern is, how do we stop it legally, by having a revolution? How do we change? How do we? I'm not worried about term senators. I'm worried about getting more senators. So we're represented, so there isn't a vacuum. And also, is there some way we can change the Supreme Court so that this is not a lifetime appointment, and it's not an appointment by the president? How can this happen?
All right, two vastly different questions.
Yeah.
The only time that George Washington, who was president of the convention, spoke in the convention itself, he had private meetings with all of us on a regular basis, but the only time he spoke publicly was on the last day when we amended the number of citizens who would be in a House district. And the great circuits are going blank. It was either from 30 to 40,000 or 40 to 30,000, I forget which. But anyway, keep in mind that a representative now represents, I think it's 974,000, something like that. Now, when they had small districts, they had what I can call shoe leather districts. Like in New Hampshire, they have a huge house, I think it's 400 people. So each one represents less than 3,000 people. And if you've got several pairs of good shoes and you're willing to walk your district, you can get elected to the House of Representatives in New Hampshire just on energy and talking to people individually. What happens when you have a million constituents? The individual stuff no longer counts. You've got to be marketed like automobiles or beer or underarm deodorant. And that costs money, and the money has to flow. Now, if we did have congressmen who were as close to the people as they were then, last time I saw it, I think it was about 7,800 members of the House of Representatives. And that's not a deliberative body, that's a mob. But it would do what you say, which is bring the House of Representatives closer to the people by definition. Because then they would all be in shoe leather districts. So the power of money, which is the power of incumbency, would disappear, and you would have a much more representative House. So if the size of the House were vastly increased, the benefits you see would be gained. With the Senate, does it matter if Wyoming has 5 senators and California has 5 senators? You still have the imbalance on population basis, and no state can lose its equal representation in the Senate without its consent. So there is no solution there. Now, as far as the members of the Supreme Court, we deliberately gave them a lifetime appointment. Why did we do that? Because we watched the abuses of the Crown in England. and to a lesser extent, or to the same extent elsewhere, but we were most familiar with England, where the Crown would threaten judges, threaten them even with execution, which, by the way, happened not long ago in one of the African countries. The Supreme Court ruled against the president, and the members who had voted to rule against him fled the country just ahead of assassination squads who were going to kill him. So when you see that sort of thing, the independence of the judiciary is not there, and there are reasons why the judges should be independent, because they have to have the capacity to rule in favor of unpopular parties when those parties deserve it. For instance, West Virginia v. Barnett, if I've got the name right, was the Jehovah's Witnesses who said, we do not pledge allegiance to anything except God. Therefore, they would not stand up in West Virginia schoolroom and give the Pledge of Allegiance. And the Supreme Court actually issued one decision saying, yes, the state can require that, which they reversed in the fastest instance of a reversal in just 13 months. They reconsidered it, and another case came up and they said, we were wrong last time. If this is a matter of your religious beliefs, the First Amendment protects you. Now, if that, well, it had been put to a vote, because West Virginia had passed a law saying if you don't stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, you get kicked out of school, and I didn't know whether the parents got involved and any burdens were placed on them because their children were out of line. But that was a popular law. So if majority vote had counted, the Jehovah's Witnesses' religious rights would have been trampled on. So it is very important that the Supreme Court be a non-democratic body, but only if it is acting within the constraints of the Constitution. So the problem is not lifetime appointment of the judges. They have a process by which justices have gotten so old they've gone potty or dispensed with. And if you've read the book, The Brethren, they went to Justice William O. Douglas when he reached the point where he was falling asleep on the bench and showing a tendency to drool. And they went to him and he said, Bill, it's time. And got him to resign. So as an institution, it protects itself from that. The problem is not that the Supreme Court has independence. It is that it uses its independence to savage the Constitution, which is a separate problem. And really the solution to that is don't elect senators who must confirm Supreme Court nominees, and don't elect presidents who nominate them, who are clueless on the subject of why we have a Constitution in the first place. You can't vote to elect or not elect a member of the Supreme Court. You can vote to elect or not elect a President of the United States who's going to appoint those people.